you might be seeing yourself like Coach Natalie there teaching it one day. So thanks, Natalie. That was pretty awesome. We're going to go over to Rihanna interview now, guys. So thank you for coaches and players. Coaches and players, you can take a back seat now, especially players, take a seat, get to the office desk, and just tune in to Rihanna right now. And we're going to get her on the spotlight. There we are. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
Is that a Brighton FC top or no?
No, it's actually a PSG top today that I am rocking.
All right, nice. We'll have to get you a Power FC top to represent us over there in the UK for sure.
Absolutely.
They're nice. All right, so yeah, we'll kick it off again. Thanks, Coach Natalie, for that demo. It was pretty good. I hope coaches and players you gain something from it. If you do need any more information on visuals or coaching, you can definitely reach out to Power Soccer, Claire Power Soccer, or info at Power Soccer for more information on coaching virtual sessions or the girls section. All right, so Rihanna, over to you. We're going to kick it off. I just want you to maybe just give the guys a little background, where you're from, where you started playing in Ireland, and who probably was your best role model, different things, just a little background of you starting off as a player.
Yeah, so my name is Rianna Jarrett. I'm 26 and I'm from Wexford, which is in the southeast of Ireland. So I have a twin brother, so naturally as twins we wanted everything that the other person had, whether it was food, whether it was toys. And when my twin brother Jordan started playing football, we were about 6 or 7. My mom took him up to the local boys team, and him and my cousin started together. And we went up, we watched, and I was playing on the sideline with some other kids. And when we got home, I was like, Mom, can I please go and play football with the boys next week? And at the start, she was like, no, football's not for girls. She was like, we'll get you something else. And I think for the remainder of the week until Jordan had training again, I think I annoyed her so much that she brought me up and let me join in and ask could I get involved. And it was me and my cousin Saoirse were the only 2 girls on that specific team at the time. My mom didn't think I'd stick at it, but here I am 20 years later still playing. So definitely if it wasn't for my twin brother, I probably wouldn't have got involved in football, or I definitely wouldn't have got involved in it at such a young age. I was lucky enough that our local team accepted everybody. It was like a family run club. Everyone from Wexford town played for the same club. We used to go and watch the men's matches together. And then they eventually formed girls teams and women's teams when I was that little bit older. But I definitely learned the early days of my trade playing on the boys teams or playing on the street with the boys or in school with boys, and kind of just progress from there.
Yeah, and on that, it's an interesting question because we do have 3 of our current girls that are on the Zoom session now playing with boys. And for you, I was just wondering, do you think that benefited you playing at all the way up to 12 or 13? And do you think you maybe missed out when you were told that you can't play with the boys anymore? Because I know for me playing back then as well, it was something like you were told you can't play anymore because you must go and play with the girls. So do you think there was some sorts of benefits from playing with the boys, and up to how long?
Yeah, I think for me, it definitely stood to me. We were unfortunate, Claire, me and you, that they stopped us playing with the boys when we were, 12 or 13? Yeah. I think now in Ireland, you can play up until 15s or 16s at least. I think for me, playing with the boys from under 8s right up to under 12s, it was probably the best thing for me, especially because I grew when I was maybe 10 or 11. I got a good growth spurt, so I was a lot physical, a lot bigger than the rest of the girls. So it stood to me playing with the boys. You have to learn to think quicker because boys are naturally that little bit faster than what girls are as well. You have to be quicker with the ball. You have to think better, think faster, but you also have to learn how to use your body very quickly. Because once the boys get used to you playing alongside them, they'll put in the same sort of tackles that they would any other boys. And I think for me, that definitely stood to me, and I wouldn't change it for the world. As I said, the best parts of my days were coming home after school, getting changed, grabbing the football and going and playing on the street with my brothers and the rest of the lads. And it was no different when we went into training. And it's great when they see a girl and they can see that they can hold their own, because as I said, they'll put in those tackles, but not only that, they'll trust you with the ball. They'll include you like you're one of the boys, really. And I think for me, that was a great thing growing up.
Yeah, no doubt you were bossing physicality against the boys right the way up. Wasn't the same for all of us, but in your opinion, what age would you say? Because like you say, it's the same here in Canada. Like Alessandra, for example, she's U14 now, and she's still playing with the boys and still like playing very well with them. And I think until you can play, keep them playing, rightly so, until you're you're starting to feel that you can't compete anymore. But in your opinion, do you think there's a certain age that you should maybe cut away and start? Because again, as females as well, it's a social aspect, and it's important for, because that's the other side, that's the side that you might miss out on. Or do you think that's important, or there's a relevance with that side of things?
To be honest, I think right up to under 18s, I don't see the issue with girls playing alongside boys. Yes, you're saying that boys get their growth spurts and obviously puberty comes into play, but I think if a girl is playing with the boys the whole way up, even as the boys start to transition, if girls have been involved in that team with them, they're gonna grow with them on the pitch. It's not as if a girl is all of a sudden just one day not play with boys and then going to play with under 16s. It isn't going to be a transition like that. So I think if a girl is holding her own and can do it, I think why stop them at a younger age? I think it can sometimes prevent them from growing, because no doubt about it, a lot of the girls teams, especially when girls teams are just starting up, if you bring a girl that's been playing with boys teams for 5 or 6 years into a newly formed girls teams, they're gonna stand out. And especially if the leagues are newly formed, then you're gonna stop that particular player from growing. I know in Ireland they've changed it now that I think girls that are under 16, I think you can play a year down when you're a girl. So if you're 16, you can play under 15s. I think that's a great thing, especially if they are worried about the physicality or the boys getting their specific growth spurts. As I said, I think the longer that you can play with boys, the better. In a lot of boys teams as well, there's more tactics as well, which you learn the game and you can see the game in a different aspect. Until the girls teams continue to grow and start from a young age, I think there's no harm in girls playing with boys teams for as long as possible.
Yeah, and you're 100% right with regards to the tactical, because I think as well it's just even that boys just watch a little bit more soccer, or they do seem to be a little bit more tuned into the game. I'm always trying to encourage the girls to watch a little bit more and gain that interest, and I think it is really important. But again, and I'm going to move on a little bit to Carlo, and Carlo was where Rihanna and I went to college together, and with college, we were in an FAI soccer coaching course, and we'd done a module that was player development, and it's kind of tied into what we were just speaking about when we actually played with some of the men. So for me, playing against the men, and like some of them, like Rihanna would have played with some more of the League of Ireland players. For me, there was 2 tiers, there was 2 groups, but for me, I just found like sometimes just over like a short acceleration over like 5 yards, that you knew like he was going to beat you to that, and it just comes into like again like genetics, and sometimes we physically can't compete, and you do have to, like you say, prove yourself a little bit more. I don't know if you felt like that in Carlo and playing with the men's with the guys.
Yeah, I mean, I loved every minute of it, especially in my first year. I was an Irish underage international at the time, and I was kind of struggling with like being in the team, being out the team, and I think my first year in Carlo crowned me. It ended up being my best year in an underage international jersey, and it was because I was playing alongside the boys that were in the top league in Ireland. So speed isn't my biggest trait. I wouldn't be the fastest player in the world. I'm powerful over a longer distance, but that short burst, that acceleration. So there was times where I knew I mightn't get to that ball, or I knew as that ball was coming to me that someone might nip in front of me. So I learned how to use my body a lot better, especially against the guys that were bigger. You don't necessarily have to be the strongest person on the pitch, but if you know how to use your body in the right way, you can manipulate the ball, but you can also manipulate the opponent for what you want to do. And I think the first couple of weeks, first couple of months, you're feeling a bit like out of depth at times. You might do 1 or 2 good things in a session where you're used to doing like them consistently throughout the session. And it was about like building confidence, but also learning that if it doesn't go right the first time, you have to try again. The boys won't let you live it down. You have something to prove, but it's also once you're comfortable and you get used to it, the enjoyment factor comes back into it, even though you know you're playing with boys that are stronger, that are faster, but it doesn't mean that you can't show what you can do. And I think once I learned that, it was such an enjoyable experience. And I'm guessing you had the same experience, Claire.
Yeah, super. Definitely. From your point of view, I get the sense that it definitely motivated you and pushed you on it and made you like a better player, like you're saying. Yeah, it motivated you more to try and compete. And like you say, being in around that international squad at that time is definitely giving you more, like you've got more advantages from training with that. And for me, what I really gained from it was probably my coaches, getting my coaches badges and seeing the game differently when you start coaching and learning the game as a player, playing at the same time. I felt that was, I probably peaked at my best then around when we start working on our UEFA B and stuff. Did you find the difference that when you start learning a little bit more tactics and learning the game, that it helped increase your performances and helped your overall gameplay?
Yeah, so me going into college, like growing up, I used to watch football religiously, used to watch the Premier League. I used to watch the Premier League years on TV. And like any given moment, I'd have football on the TV. My mom used to kill me. But it was just what I wanted to watch. If it wasn't football, it was the music channel. So when I went into college, I'd never considered coaching. All I was like, I'm playing. I was like, why would I get involved in coaching? But obviously, first year college, you have to get involved in coaching. And to be honest, it was the best thing that I ever done. As you said, you have to look at the game in a completely different angle, look at things completely different. And once you can pick out those little things from not only outside looking in, but on the inside as well, especially when you're playing, you can kind of like switch between that player mode and that coach mode, and you can kind of see things a little bit differently. And it allows you to not only see the bigger picture, but to see the minor details, which could determine whether something was successful or something was unsuccessful. And I think as we went through the coaching badges, you went into more detail, you went into unit specific. And I think from breaking it down from a coach's point of view, you got to understand what to look for. So then as a player, you know where the opportunities are and what for you to do. And I was unfortunate that I was injured a lot of the time when we were doing our coaching badges. But since I've been back on the pitch, I just have a completely different outlook on how the game is played. And especially as a professional now, we analyze the games after we played them. So looking back on not only my own performance, but also the team's performance as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. And like just from playing with you, I remember you always just being like one step ahead, like in the sense that, like you said, you're probably not the quickest over 5 yards or whatever your acceleration and stuff, but you're always in the box at the right place at the right time. For me, I used to always admire that as a player, and I was wondering why do you think you've got that one step ahead? Do you think it's because of the coaching? Do you think it's because of you've played, like you say, for so long, and you're like you say, you've watched so much soccer and tried to study it? What do you think has kind of got you to kind of that level in the sense of psychologically as well?
I think for me, it had a lot to do with the coaches that were around me. Obviously, when we went into the course in Carlow, Paul O'Reilly was fantastic, and Luke, and then obviously Tom coming in then at the later stages. And I was lucky enough then at club level to have great coaches that, because I wasn't the fastest, and typically centre forward strikers, a lot of coaches want fast players because they think that they're going to get them into certain positions. But for me, because I knew I wasn't the fastest, I knew how to play to my strengths. And it was also important then as a coach that the rest of my teammates knew how to play to my strengths. So I'm quite strong, I'm quite physical. I like to get involved in the build-up. And then I like to be on the end of the build-up then as well. So one coach told me as a striker, where possible, to only play the width of the box, because that's where you're most effective. If you start going into wide channels when you don't need to, when your wingers are there, or when the midfielders are making those runs, or the fullbacks are overlapping, then you're taking yourself out of those goal scoring opportunities when that next ball is played. And now if I ever find myself drifting or crosses come into the box and I'm not there, I'm like, that's because I got dragged out to a position that I know I'm not necessarily needed at that time. So obviously there are going to be times where you're going to need to make that run, or you're going to get dragged out, or you might have to make an unselfish run to bring a defender with you to make space for teammates. That's completely different. But there are times where I was finding myself in positions that I didn't need to be in. And once that was kind of brought to my attention and I was able to recognize it then as the game was going, I got smarter in terms of my movements. I got smarter in terms of making my movements off of my midfielders or my wingers. And I suppose the more you play with people, the more comfortable you get. And you know when a ball goes to a certain position, you know where that player is going to go, or you know where they want to go. So it's all about kind of building a relationship on the pitch. And once you build a relationship with your teammates, it's a hell of a lot easier for you as an individual, but also for the team. And I think learning that from a young age, I think has stood to me. And obviously I still have a lot to learn.
Yeah, that's really interesting that you say that, like, because me personally, like, not as probably a goal scorer as my forte. Like, I used to always make them attacking runs, but I'd be central, but I'd make them out wide to, like, you know, cross over maybe with the winger or whatever. But that's a really good point. And any strikers out there listening, like, that's something, like, you know, makes so much sense. Like, it's genius really, because you can't score goals if you're not in around that penalty box or in around that 18-yard box. So a really good point. I'm just going to look over to the chat box. I've seen lots of questions, but we actually are coming to all of them. So the questions, we will get to you guys and we will answer, but they just aren't on topic at the moment. So we will be getting to all of them questions, but really good questions coming in. I'm keeping an eye on them, and Maria's letting me know as well. I just want to move on to your time in USA, Rihanna. So you did get offered a scholarship to UT Martin Skyhawks 2014. And I know that kind of interrupted your time at Carlow. I'd love to, and especially the guys in Canada, because it's a little bit closer to home, they'd love to hear about, you know, how that went for you, what your experience was, what you studied, and just kind of any general kind of advice that you would have for going stateside and playing on a scholarship.
So yeah, I had done 2 years in IT Carlow at the time, so I was a year ahead of Claire to begin with, and I was actually just coming back. I was just back from doing my ACL for the first time. We had a cup final with Wexford Youths. I remember we played Castlebar. It was the first final that we'd ever been in as a club, and there was a coach. So the college that I ended up going to, the coach was from Northern Ireland. So he was always looking for players. He's always looking for Irish players, always looking for Europeans to go over to the States and join his team. So he obviously heard about me and happened to come to the game. And after the game, he spoke to my manager and he was like, would you be okay if I spoke to Rihanna and basically asked her if she wanted to take up the opportunity to come to the US? So initially I had said no. I was very hesitant. Different things going on at home and different circumstances. I was like, I don't really know if now is the time to go, and never told anyone, never spoke to anyone about it. And then a week later, he contacted me again. He was like, look, we would really love to have you. And he was like, we can come down to Wexford, we can meet your family, we can show you everything that you need to know if you have any questions. So from then I spoke to my mom, I spoke to my auntie, I spoke to my coach obviously, and I spoke to my brother. And they were all like looking at me as if I had like 5 or 6 heads. They were like, why wouldn't you take this opportunity? They were like, we don't understand like what the issue is. So after listening to them, obviously those closest to me, I decided, look, what have I got to lose? I deferred my place in college in IT Carlow, which meant that if for any reason that I came home, I would be able to take up my spot in 3rd year the following September. So everything would work out if for whatever reason I didn't like it in the US. So I flew out to the US then. I think it was the end of July, start of August. And from the first moment I got there, I loved every minute of it. It was a small college in the middle of absolute nowhere in Tennessee. It was a culture shock to me. I was completely out of my depths, but I was there to play football. And preseason was tough, but enjoyed it, got me fitter. I was probably the fittest I'd ever been after the preseason. We played 20 games in the space of 2-3 months. We were playing possibly most Wednesdays and most Saturdays or Sundays. And I was fortunate enough that I could transfer into a similar course. So I was doing a similar kind of sports management course over there. It wasn't soccer specific for what I was doing, but it was still interesting. And it was a lot of stuff that I was interested in and I wanted to do. So finished up there. I had a great season. I broke a few records in the college. And I said, we were playing football all the time, basically in a full-time environment, but also doing education on top of it, which was everything that I wanted to do. I knew I needed an education because especially in women's football, it's might pay the bills for while you're playing, but especially in my day, for what else, I won't earn enough to set me up for the rest of my life. So I knew from a young age that I needed education. I need something to do outside of football. So I was happy to do that. I would have stayed out in the US only I came home for Christmas, went on an international camp, and unfortunately done my ACL the second time. And I felt for me at that time, I'd be more comfortable and I'd be better off coming back to Ireland to do my recovery. I'd be in a better headspace with my family and friends. And I made that decision, and it's one that I don't look back on.
Yeah, and you know, that's a really, really tough thing to do. Obviously go away, and then like you say, what age were you then? You were a little bit younger, and then, you know, to have that type of injury, it makes sense, you know, that you need support and you need your family behind you. I just want to look at the chat box, guys. Is there any questions in relation to the US and the scholarship program for Rihanna? Because I do want to try and keep the questions on topic. For me, Rihanna, was your scholarship, was it like a full scholarship, so you didn't have to pay like any expenses? You were looked after? How were you treated? How was the training, like, in the sense of, was it so strenuous that, you know, like you say, you sound like you were playing like full time, but yeah, having to study? Was there any kind of barriers there, challenges within that?
So yeah, obviously it was very hectic in terms of, you go first and you start your preseason, and classes don't start until the end of August. So that gives you time to settle in. The only people on campus are the athletes. So you've got, obviously we had the women's football, you had the American football guys, you had basketball, baseball. So it's kind of, you get to meet kind of the people that you're probably going to spend most of your time with, because you could relate on that level of like sport and kind of wanting to be in that professional field. So that was great, because especially when I was younger, I was quite shy, and even when I first went to college, I was quite quiet. Like, I wouldn't go out of my way to speak to someone, but if someone came and spoke to me, I'd relax a little bit and I'd talk. So I think for the first 2 or 3 days I was out there, I was like really shy and really in myself. But once I got comfortable and started to interact a little bit more, I think I learned a lot about myself over there, which was probably one of the best things to happen. In terms of training and managing the school schedule then, typically when you're in season, which is the fall season, so from August until Christmas, you can pick to do less classes depending on when you want to graduate, but they've got advisors that will help you to make sure that you're always on track to graduate. That's the most important part when you go to college. Yes, you're there to go and play football, but it's still about your academics, and there's always people there to help you stay on track. And if you're not hitting your grades, then you're not eligible to play the sport that you're there for. So there's loads of people there to help. So they help you pick your class schedule around the roster as such for the games and training that you're going to do. And then obviously they're aware that if you have a double header away, you might travel on a Wednesday and not be back until the Monday. But they're there to help. Your coaches are there to help. If you need a tutor, they're there to help. And then also your teammates are. So I'd say to anyone that is considering it's a fantastic opportunity, but just be careful on the opportunity that you take. There are a lot of schools out there, and not all schools have the same facilities or can offer you the same thing. I was fortunate enough that I went on a full scholarship, and the only thing I had to pay for was the flights, which was fantastic. So definitely look at all your options. Don't just jump at the first one that comes to you. Get advice from people. Obviously, if you have to go and visit a college, go and see your surroundings, go and see the coaches, get used to the people before you make any decisions to commit to anything, would be my biggest advice.
Brilliant. And your message is definitely clear with, and I would really preach that you're, like you say, being a woman in the game, you know, making sure that you have an education and have something to fall back on. Because like you say, it might not set you up for life. It might be good for a first while, but again, and as well as that, and as you know more than anything, injuries or anything else can happen, and you need to make sure that you do have an education to fall back on. So yeah, really good. Thanks, Rianna. There's some questions. one was saying, was it hard to leave home and go to the US? I know you spoke about that already. And there was another one as well with the difference in Ireland and US and the difference in playing in the two different countries. And I think you've mentioned a lot about the facility of education. It's definitely different. But I suppose you've had IT Carlow and you've had USA scholarship as well to kind of compare the both. I suppose that would be the first question. What was the differences?
Yeah, I suppose just touching on the missing home part. I think for me, when I turned down the opportunity first, I was overanalyzing how much I'd miss my family, how much I'd miss things, and I didn't really think about the whole experience. And obviously, with technology these days, like everyone's just the other side of the phone, no matter the time distance. Like the difference in time, like all I had to do was pick up the phone and I could chat to whoever, whenever. And I think once I realized that, once I actually got out to America, there was no problems. To be honest, I was busy, I was doing what I loved, I was enjoying it. I didn't really have time to miss home. In terms of the facilities, we were very, very lucky in IT Carlow. I think we had top class facilities. The AstroTurf pitch that we had, the gym facilities, and obviously the programs that we had. But when you go to America, it's next level. Obviously, depending on the school, depends on what they offers, but majority of the schools have fantastic facilities. I mean, our own locker room that we had, you had like your own name on top of your own locker, your own personal space. When you first get there, obviously each college has a different sponsor, be it Nike, Under Armour, Adidas. So you get all your brand new kit, you get your boots, you get kind of everything. And obviously the bigger schools you get to, they have a lot more funding. Based on obviously the biggest sport in the school, which is typically the American football. But going from there then into the gym facilities and the pitch facilities and everything, it was completely different. And even the playing style was completely different. I know comparing Ireland to America, Ireland's a lot more tactical and kind of technical players, whereas in America it is a lot more about the overall athlete. You think of from school and high school, they're introduced to the gym, the weights, everything like that. And it's kind of a transition phase from high school to college to the US women's national team. That's across the board. That's where you look at the likes of all the US internationals that are in England at the minute. They've all gone through that cycle and playing at the top of the game, and not only international level, but also at club level as well. And it all starts from a young age. And I think that's why the US women's national team has such an advantage over the rest of the world, because they've been building towards this for years, and the other countries are only playing catch up.
Yeah, and for me, I'm just reading Megan Rapinoe's book, and I
actually have that here myself. I haven't started it yet, but I have it there.
Yeah, shout out to Molly's mom who's on. She gave me a lend of it. It's pretty good, but she talks about the crowds and how much playing in college, and the crowds that come out and the community and the atmosphere. And she said at one point, I think she said it was like something. It's better than playing like a national team game because of the sense of like, you know, you're playing for that badge, you know, that kind of that, you know, and similar like you would say for youths and P-Mount, and you're really, really proud of who you play for. But the difference, I think, for, you know, college or playing college football in Ireland and playing college football in USA, it's probably like massive in the sense of like filling stadiums, getting like you say stadiums and an audience full. But it seems like that's the way that colleges, they're like the women's national league in a sense. They're not like, you know. And when I say the women's national, like just to the viewers, it's that would have been the highest level football in Ireland, but yeah, it's still amateur. The girls have to get funding, and me and Rihanna are playing, and the girls are seeing Kylie out looking for membership to help the girls, so they have to pay to play. But yeah, it's still a high level in Ireland, and but that's another topic definitely for another day. But yeah, that's probably one of the differences, that like stadiums and crowds that you're playing in front of was probably a really, really good motivator.
Yeah, I feel like obviously the difference in America is that the college teams are like the community team. So it is their local team. It's who they'll go and watch week in, week out. a family, it's a community. And I think especially when the biggest thing I thought was when I went to a men's American football game, it was the University of Tennessee, so it was the main campus. Their stadium holds 110,000 people for a college football game. And sitting in the stands watching that, for me, I was just like breathtaking. Like, I was like, I've never seen anything like this before in my life. And this is college. This isn't even the professional level. Like, it was crazy, but you can see it.
Yeah, and I suppose the question is now, obviously we know Ireland, we know USA, but England, like before, I know you signed pretty much 2 months before COVID hit, and you were locked down and sent back to Ireland on your way, but not a great start. But yeah, like what's before? Did you get a sense of the setup there and the crowds and the environment? Was there a similar kind of like you said, community feel? And I probably didn't get any games, but I know right now it's hard to tell because we're all playing closed doors and stuff. But do you have any knowledge on how that is and what it's like there?
Yeah, so I was lucky that when I signed for Brighton last January, there was a couple of weeks where when I was first getting involved in the team, getting used to training, that I wasn't in the matchday squads, but I was still around on match days, and you definitely sense that like kind of family feel. I think that's where women's football, especially here in England and in Ireland, differs from the men. I think the relationship between the players and the fans is completely different. I feel like you connect on more of a personal level. I feel like because the women's game is only growing and it's continuing to grow, that we appreciate the fans more than what the men do. The men, it's just a typical standard. They know that United are playing at Old Trafford. They know they're going to fill it regardless of who they're playing or what time their game is on. Whereas the women have never had that. We've had to grow a fan base, and I think it was we played the US women's national team in 2019 in the Rose Bowl, and there was like 30,000+. They were on their victory tour after winning the World Cup in France.
We won't say the score to that.
No, we won't say the score, but like it was just an unbelievable experience. And for me, like it's not a competitive game. There's nothing at stake, but you could see the excitement in the fans when the players came out into the pitch and the players taking time to kind of walk around to different sides of the stadium. Like it's unbelievable. And it's like that here in England because the women's game is continuing to grow and you've got these top teams that are investing in. You look at United, their women's team is only around for 3 years, and they're currently sitting third in the Women's Super League because they're starting to invest money. And I think it's next Sunday or Saturday, for the first time, they're playing in Old Trafford, the women's team are.
Oh, wow.
And hopefully that the women's game is going to continue to grow. We'll start to get more fans, and we'll start to be playing and sharing the stadiums with the men's team here in Brighton. They're actually expanding the men's training ground for us at the minute. It was due to be finished in January this year, but with everything due to COVID, it's been delayed. But by the time we come back for pre-season, the end of June, start of July, we're going to have our own building, our own pitches at the men's training ground. So our own place that we can call home, that we don't have to worry about clearing out for when the men have a game or anything like that. And the more that clubs start to do that, the more the women's game is going to grow, and the more connection then that we can have, not only with the fans, but also the club, not only the women's section, but the men's section as well. And it's exciting times.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing. Definitely, if we can start seeing more clubs around the world, a little bit more equality within, training facilities. And, it's great even 2019 with the USA getting, equal pay. There was also like protests with our own national team trying to even just get paid to go and play. Like some of the girls would have had to leave work and probably suffer financially and missing time away at work. And then kit, that barrier that was there for so many years within the FAI, that players at the women's national league or women's national side had to share kit. It seems a little bit crazy now, but it wasn't that long ago.
No, I actually laugh about it, like thinking about it, because I would have been like under 17s, under 19s, and before you go on your trip, you get your bag full of gear, and you have to give it all back at the end of the trip. So the last day we'd be traveling obviously we don't have to travel in Ireland kit. We get back to Dublin airport and you just see the whole squad like just going into different toilets and getting changed into our old clothes. And then there'll be a bag left to put like our tracksuits in so that they can take it back to headquarters to wash it all and be distributed to the next team. Like, and at that time, like we didn't think anything of it. Like we were like, that was the norm. But like the women's team had to protest for a set of tracksuits so that we all have our own tracksuits. We can arrive to camp and leave camp in. Like it's crazy. And as you said, there was players that were working full time in Ireland, and if there was a 10-day camp, they'd have to take like 7 days off of work unpaid, so they'd be out of pocket to represent their country. And it only reconciliated with me when I started playing with the senior team and I was working full time. I was like, if I had to take 7 days of unpaid leave every time I had to go and play for my country, I wouldn't be able to afford it. I wouldn't be able to pay bills. There'd be times in the month where I probably wouldn't be able to afford to feed myself for the month. Like, and it's crazy. You shouldn't be out of pocket representing your country. We're not looking to make a living, but you shouldn't be out of pocket having to do it, which thankfully the protests work and times are starting to change. And I think in Ireland, sooner or later, they are looking to close that gap between what the men get and what the women get.
Yeah. So has it changed? Like you say, you've seen, you're definitely one who's been underage, like you say, 17s, 19s, and now seniors. And how much has it changed? And do you think the difference has obviously been, a positive difference and impacted the players? Because you're pretty, like, past couple of games you've done pretty well. So do you think that's something that, like you say, it's your bread and butter, but it's something that needs to be implemented and not like they shouldn't have to worry about?
Yeah, I think it's things have changed drastically, but there's still a lot more that needs to improve. But I think looking at the Ireland team as a whole, not only the seniors but the underage, it's more of a professional setup, looking not only from the outside in but being inside that setup as well. And I think that was the biggest thing, especially when Colin Bell, our previous manager, took over in 2017. It was about bringing that professionalism off the pitch and then doing your talking on the pitch. And I think learning from that and setting those standards, we've grown and grown and grown over the last couple of years. And we were very unfortunate to miss out on a playoff for the Europeans. And I think we go into the World Cup qualifiers now in September. And I think we bring all that experience, all that professionalism, and hopefully we can grow. And we're looking to qualify for our first major tournament as a nation. And I think the backing and support that we've got now, also not only from the FAI but from everyone within Ireland, is fantastic. And I think back in Tala, when we were allowed fans back in the later end of 2019, we had our record attendance at Tala Stadium. I think it was like over 5,000. Yeah, which was fantastic for us.
Yeah, great scenes, definitely some great images. I think I got one of your images from that, and just seeing the fans in the stadium, it's amazing. And a lot of the players, I think, within Ireland now, like, you've got your Niamh Fahey, Liverpool captain, and Amber and Claire Reardon would have played with us in Carlow, going to Germany. A lot of the players, Denise O'Sullivan definitely needs a mention, playing in the US. Katie McCabe, they're playing professional, like, so they are full time. And I think that's the difference. As a small nation, it's really hard for us probably to compete, because some of the players within and around the squads are still playing maybe Women's National League, and it's not enough really to be training twice a week Women's National League in Ireland and playing a game. So I think definitely, like, that needs to change a little bit as well. And the more funding that we can get probably from the FAI and spectators and like an audience and a view, that we can improve the players that we have and hopefully keep them within the game in Ireland. But we definitely don't fault you for moving to Brighton and anyone moving away. It's definitely something that it makes sense, and we always wish players well when they do go away overseas or whatever. But I just think, for us, I definitely think that that there's still room to grow, but definitely there has been improvements, like you say. But I'm just wary of a little bit of time, because I know I spoke with Rianna and she said it's okay to go a little bit over time. I am going to switch to the chat box. I'm going to give myself a break from talking. Coach Natalie is going to take over the chat box. So she's just going to ask you a couple of questions. Also, we will go over to Alessandra Page as well, who actually wants to ask you in person herself. She sent her message, her question over early, so we do want to fit that in. So Natalie, if you would like to just go through any of the questions on the chat box that you think would be worth another shout.
So if we go way back up, one of the first questions was, do you get nervous before games, and how do you deal with the nerves?
Yeah, I actually get nervous before every game. I think your most important game is always your next game, regardless of what's happened. But I was very fortunate that a coach of mine, when I was 17, 18, kind of gave me a little talk about nerves. Nerves aren't bad. They're not a bad thing. I mean, it shows you care, and it shows you care about what happens in the game. But it's learning how to channel those nerves into good energy to enable you to perform. So make sure that you get on top of those nerves. Don't let those nerves affect you, and just concentrate on the task at hand. And always remember, when you go into a game, all the hard work was done in the week or the weeks leading up to it. It's just about putting everything that you've practiced into motion, and then going from there.
For sure. Another question, going back, as a young player, how much unstructured practice did you do on a weekly basis?
Oh, I done loads. As I said, from a kid, it was always come home from school, get changed. I wouldn't even have my dinner. Mom used to kill me if I get my dinner, grab a football, and go out on the street with the boys or by myself. If you have a ball and a wall or a couple of objects, that is literally all that you need. And that's what I done mostly when I was younger.
We need more of that.
The ball is your best friend. I always say that to the guys. You need to, especially in these days, you know, your wall is, and the soccer ball are your best friend. Just get out and play, kick a ball.
Just make sure it's not the neighbor's wall. I used to get in trouble for hitting off the neighbor's wall, and they wouldn't be able to hear the TV. So yeah.
Then we've got a ton of favorite questions. So what's your favorite move? What's your favorite position? Who was your idol growing up?
So my idol growing up was Thierry Henry. I'm an Arsenal fan, so he's played with Arsenal, one of the best strikers in the Premier League. And then also Robbie Keane, who is without a doubt Ireland's best goal scorer and striker. My favorite position has to be a striker. It's where I've spent most of my career playing. I used to be a midfielder, but because of what I like to see my natural eye for goal, I managed to move that a little bit further. And in terms of my favorite move, nothing beats seeing the ball hit the back of the net for me. I think it's just one of the best feelings in the world.
Going off that, who's your favorite female soccer player or footballer?
So at the minute, it would be actually Denise O'Sullivan. So she's playing with North Carolina Courage. I think she was their MVP for the last 2 seasons. And I'm very fortunate enough that I get to play alongside her with the Irish team. And she also done a short spell here in Brighton. But I think any young player, watch her and just find out about her. She's phenomenal. A professional in all that.
Yeah, her work ethic is definitely something that is just has to be admired, isn't it? She's always She does the dirty work, but then is so tidy on the ball then as well, which is often hard to come by. She does the best of both worlds. And she came out of Cork by.
And she used to be told when she was younger, she was told she was too small. So remember that one.
Height isn't everything.
I know you said that you played mostly as a striker, but somebody is asking how many positions you did play, and did moving around into different positions help with the developmental process? Yeah,
so I played in different positions across midfield growing up, and even now at times, sometimes you have to fill in. There's been at times this season where I found myself either right or left wing. And I think playing in different positions allows you to see the game differently. So then when you expect something of a teammate that plays in those positions, you know kind of the obstacles that they come up against or how they see the game. So it can definitely help in your improvement. And I'd recommend to, especially kids growing up, just because you want to play in one position doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be your strongest position. As I said, I started off as a midfielder, slowly managed to gravitate forward and kind of found my feet there.
For For sure. This one's a tough one. Hindsight being 2020, what would you tell your younger self?
Ooh. Definitely to never let the setbacks define you. Whether that's on the field or whether that's in life itself, you're always going to come across setbacks, and it's not about what happens to you, but it's about how you react and how you move on from there. And I think that can be brought into everyday life, whether that's in work or family or friends. And I think that's something that I'd love to tell my younger self, because it's very important.
We've got an interesting one here. What do you do when you get frustrated?
So when I get frustrated, it's easier said than done, but it's like try and take a breath. Whether it's you're getting frustrated at yourself in a session, it's like take a split second to just bring yourself back to where you are. There'll always be another ball, there'll always be another pass. If you make a mistake, don't let that define your game. Worry about the next pass, the next ball, the next shot. That's all you can do. Focus on what you control and build from there.
We're nearing the end here, but here we go. Who were the hardest team you've ever played against, and what was your proudest goal you've ever scored?
So I'll start. My proudest goal that I've ever scored would have to be my first senior international goal. So it was against Ukraine back in October 2019. It was the game where we had a record attendance in our home stadium. We managed to win the game, which was important at that time of our qualifying campaign. I think the toughest team I've played against would have to be at international level would be the US women's national team. And then at club level, I'm going to say Man City.
All right. We got some new ones just coming in. What do you think of street soccer? Playing without the official rules, is it beneficial for the development of soccer players?
Yeah, I think street soccer, it can definitely help you in terms of your close control and being creative. Obviously in an 11v11 or whatever size your structured game is, a lot of the game is structured, but the game is won by those bits of individual brilliance or those thinking outside of the box. So not everything is structured. Yes, your managers, your coaches can tell you exactly how you want to play, how other teams are going to play, but ultimately it comes down to who's got that little bit of edge. And I think that can definitely be learned in street soccer, but it's being able to balance the both and know when and where to bring those actions into a game.
For sure. I'm not sure if this is a question as you being a coach, but how do you convince kids to play in different positions? Do you have any input?
I think just make it more fun. I think especially when you're younger, don't get kind of fascinated on the outcome of a game, but more the improvement of the player or the enjoyment of the player. And I think by playing small-sided games, especially, it's allowing people to rotate without even knowing, because they might end up in a position and then you're like, you need to fill into that position until the next ball or the next phase. And I think once kids kind of see that and become open to all possibilities, I think that's where you can get the best out of them as an individual, but also as a team player then as well.
I agree. I think that's it, Claire.
Okay, thank you, and thanks for putting your questions in. There was one I think that you missed on like the transition. Did you answer that already about the transition from playing in Ireland to going to England?
Oh no, sorry.
Did you answer that one?
No, but yeah, so for me, the transition from going from when I played in Ireland, I was working full time. I was training twice a week at my club. I was doing my gym sessions in the morning before work, going to work, then going straight to training in the evenings. We'd play a game on the weekend. So when I moved to Brighton, we're full time. So we train 4 or 5 times a week and we play a game at the weekend. And it was definitely a kind of a shock to the system at the beginning, getting used to that and getting used to not only the physicality but the speed of play, coming up against women and girls that have played professional for a lot longer than I have. And even now, a year plus down the line, I'm still growing, still getting used to it. And I think arguably the WSL is one of the best leagues, if not the best league in the world at the minute. some top class players from all over the world. And I think for me, being in this kind of field a year, I've learned a lot and I've come a long way. But although I'm like a mature player, I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go. And I think every day is a learning curve. And I think for every player, it's important that you take those learning opportunities, that you go into every training session, every game with like an open mentality, being open to your coaches, being able to accept some feedback, a little bit of criticism, and being able to channel that in the right direction. I've had a few setbacks since I've been here, but it's definitely made me stronger and kind of hungrier to show what I can do. And I feel that there's a lot more to come from me at this level, hopefully.
Yeah, and we didn't even get to really speak about the whole ACL and the setbacks that you've gone through with. For our listeners, obviously some of you might know Rihanna's done her ACL 3 times. I think we touched on it briefly, but for me, I suppose this is a question that, like, you look to be so mentally tough, because to come back from 3 ACLs and get to where you are today, playing at your peak right now at 26, it must have taken a lot of, like, you know, mental strength and psychological techniques. Is there anything that you would say to players if they did get any setbacks with regards, it could be anything, injuries or school or anything like that? Is there any things that you would advise or you would use to try and help yourself get back on the field and get back on track?
Yeah, so for me, going through all of those injuries and all of those setbacks, I learned a lot about myself, not only as a player, but as a person. And I think those lessons that I've learned are definitely standing to me in everyday life. As I said previously, it's never let a setback define you. It's how you build and how you grow and how you react from that. And I think for me, I was fortunate enough that I had a great support system around me. No matter how I was feeling or what I was going through, there was always people there that I could lean on. For me, especially when I was younger, I used to kind of bottle things up. And even if it was about my injury, if I was having a bad day, if I was having a bad session in my rehab, I wouldn't really speak about it. But it got to a point where I had like kind of a little breakdown and I didn't know why I was doing what I was doing, didn't know whether I wanted to continue playing. And I think once I started to open up, and especially on my bad days, started to kind of let people in that little bit more, it helped me. And although it's a lonely road doing the recovery by yourself, you don't have to be alone in doing it. You've got your friends, you've got your family. I have my teammates, and I think that comes for every aspect of life. No matter what you're going through, there'll always be people, whether it's your parents, whether it's your coaches. And I think coaches are fantastic for that, because coaches don't only care about what happens when you're there for that hour or that hour and a half. They care about you as a person. They're there to help you grow both on and off the pitch. And I think once you can have that honesty and that openness with a coach, if you are struggling with anything, even if it is outside of football, that they can help you, even if you think they can't. And I think especially once you come into like your teenage years and you start to get a little bit older, it's important that you realize that you have people that you can rely on, that you can trust and confide in. And I think once you do that, they say like a problem shared is a problem halved. And I think I really learned that going through those difficult times.
And you're really brave in saying that and speaking out, and it's definitely something that needs to be said a lot more. And you know, you're not on your own, and we do need to be encouraging players to speak and talk. But I think you have to take a bit of credit for that yourself, honestly. I just want to kind of pick your brain one more. I know we're going to wrap up then Alessandra's question, but psychological techniques, imagery, like self-talk, you know, you must have all of that going on, whether you know it or not, because I get it. You're so positive. Like, I've always admired you for just being so positive, so laid back. I'd be stressing out about college and Rihanna be telling me to relax, everything's gonna be okay. And it like you say, their friends are around you and stuff, but I think you have to take some of that credit for that.
I think for me, I think growing up, it was like more like my stubbornness is why I'm the way I am. It's like I'd never let anything like get to me so much that I couldn't control it or feel like I couldn't control it. And for me, it's the same on the pitch and off the pitch. It's about controlling the controllables. There's a lot of things in life, there's a lot of things in sport that you can't control. And if you let all of those little things eat you up, then ultimately you are going to find ways to be negative. And definitely with the self-talk that you manage, there's enough negativity going on in the world. There's enough negativity going on towards women's sport, women's athletes. And I think if you can find a way to talk good to yourself, to kind of give yourself those little boosts, to kind of give yourself 5 or 6 seconds to reset and remember everything that you've done or everything that you've accomplished, and then what's gotten you to where you are. And then if you can figure out then that path to get to where you want to be, or to get to that next stage in your life, I think it can definitely help you if you're having a bad day, or you're unsure, or you're lacking in confidence. I think the easiest thing to do is to look back on all the good things that you've done. It's easy to sit there and like hammer yourself about making a bad pass or having a bad game or having a bad week's training, but it doesn't define you. It's like, can you always find a path to those good memories, those good actions, those good comments from your coaches, from your family? And I think once you kind of store just 1 or 2 of them to get you out of those tough times, it's what'll help. And I think that's what got me through, especially my last recovery. The last time I done my ACL was the hardest, because I said I was questioning whether I could come back, whether I wanted to come back, whether it was worthwhile. And I think the penny just dropped one day when I went to watch my old team train, and never missed a training session, never missed a match, even when I was injured. And I could just see the fun that they were having on the pitch at training. And I was like, that's why I play. And once I remembered why I played the game, it wasn't, obviously as a child, I wanted to play international level, I wanted to be a professional, but that wasn't why I played the game. I played the game because I loved it, and I stuck at it because I loved the game. Once I remembered why, that was all the fire that I needed, and that was the only thing that I needed to get me through, to get me back on the pitch.
And that's a great message as well to everyone. And it was said earlier, it's that we all play because we love it, and our passion for the game, and try to keep that spark. It's definitely a great message. I'm just going to go to Alessandra to unmute herself. I know she's been dying to ask this question for the past hour. Again, this is our feature player, so just go ahead there, Alessandra.
Hi, my name's Alessandra. It's really nice to meet you. I have 2 questions for you, if that's okay. So what's your pre-match routine, and what is the main difference between playing international and top-level club football?
So my pre-match routine is I try to keep it as small as I can, so that no matter where I am, no matter who I'm playing, no matter how I get to a game, that it's something that I can do consistently. So for me, the biggest thing is, no matter if I'm on a bus, no matter if I'm in a car, no matter where the game is, no matter if I'm driving myself or if my parents are dropping me, that I have like 5 minutes before I get changed or I get ready for the game, that I have my music, that I have my headphones on, I've blocked out the world, so I can kind of just channel my thoughts to get in the zone, get in the mood, and kind of get focused and geared up for the game. As I said, the hard work has been done in the week leading up to the game, but it's just about channeling myself, making sure that I'm in the right frame of mind, and that I know what I'm doing. And I think for me, music helps me with that. Sorry. I can select the music, and as I said, for me, it's world out music on, and it's just me and my thoughts and my music, and that's what I need. 5 minutes max. That's all I need. In terms of playing internationally and then playing at the top level here, I think the biggest thing is, obviously with club, we have a lot more contact hours with each other. They're both top levels. We're both coming up against like top players, both at international level and club level. But at club level, the difference is we have a lot more contact hours with each other. We have a lot more of a bond. We kind of know each other, kind of the ins and outs. Whereas when you go to international level, yes, we know each other, but it's that pride, it's that passion, it's a different feeling playing for your country. You're not only playing for yourself and that 11 or that 23 that are involved. You're playing for your family, you're playing for your friends, your cousins, your teammates. And I think putting on an Ireland jersey, nothing will ever compare to it, and I'll never get used to it. Standing up for the national anthem, my nanny, my mum, my auntie, they still cry every time the national anthem is being played. And I think for me, growing up
as well, God.
I think it's just that pride and that passion, because I think anyone can play at club level, but there's only a select few that can say that they've played for their country, and it's something that I'll never forget and I'll never take for granted.
Excellent. Excellent answers. And that's why I knew, Rihanna, Jarrett, we would go over time, but you're giving us everything here and we're loving it and we're eating it up. And I'm sorry, but we do have one more question that was put in the chat box, and it was one of my questions that I was going to ask you as well. Who was your toughest opponent that you've come up against? So you mentioned your favorite opponents, but who have you really come up against in maybe international or women's or the WSL?
I think at international, the toughest player that I feel is Juliet. Just the way she plays for the US women's national team, just her physicality, her athleticism, but then also just her quality on the ball. Literally couldn't get near her when we were playing them. And I think she's one of the players that goes unnoticed amongst a team full of stars for them. And then at club level, I think one of the best strikers in the game, undoubtedly at the minute, has to be Miedema, who's a Dutch international. I think she's joint top scorer of all time in the Women's Super League, and she's been here since 2017.
Arsenal?
Yeah, Arsenal player. She's phenomenal. She can go missing for 90 minutes in a game, but she'll still score.
And that's all that matters, isn't it? Really getting it in the back of the net. That's going to get you goals. I had a question as well on who you'd sign. If you had to sign anybody, who would you sign?
Oh, if I could sign anybody. It's biased, but I'd sign Denise O'Sullivan. She'd be my first player on every team sheet, because her doing the dirty work allows me to play my game.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal. And as I said, like I learned a lot from her playing at club level with her for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah, she's defensively as well. She cleans everything up, but then, like you said, on the ball, she can play a diag and feed you in and get you goals. Yeah, that's all really. Now, does anybody else have anything? Because I know we have taken a lot of Rihanna's time. Rihanna, you are a legend, honestly. Thank you for your time and your story. I hope, and I think you have touched on and touched a lot of players and coaches, and me included in that. You've really been a great role model for them, and it's good to hear how positive you are, because especially during these times, we're still not back on the pitch with our teams and with our girls. So I think this boost hopefully will encourage them to stay motivated and stay focused. And they appreciate your advice. I know they do. So thank you so much.
No worries. I said thanks for having me on, and I just want to wish you all the best. Hopefully you can get back on the pitch sooner rather than later, but I think these sort of things are fantastic. I've actually really enjoyed like the little skills and the little setup that you had. I was actually quite fascinated watching both yours and Natalie's setup. So I think that's great for the girls. Although you can't be there in person, there's still a lot that you can get done remotely, which will certainly stand to you when you're back on the pitch. And I think you can touch on those finer details that you mightn't be able to do kind of every session, which is fantastic.
100%. And I hope the players can take that message home as well, because like you said before, the wall is your best friend and the ball is your best friend. Try and bring it everywhere, girls, and get as many touches on the ball as you can, because like you say, we're not back on the field. But yeah, an awesome interview. Thanks so much, guys. Thanks for joining everybody else. I just said awesome. Yeah, I did, Rihanna. Yeah.
You've changed, Claire. You have changed.
I was waiting. Love it. But no, brilliant to see you. And I honestly, when things get back up, you're always welcome over here. To meet and greet the girls. There's a place to stay at my place when things get back to normal. We'd love to have you over coaching the girls, or just even coming in to say hello or whatever it might be. So you're always welcome. Actually, I have 2 questions for everybody else, and we're going to give two prizes away. I forgot the prizes. We have 2 prizes, and the first person to put the answer in the chat box, Coach Maria is going to monitor it. You will win a Power FC or a Power Soccer jersey. Okay, so the question is, first one up, where is Rianna Jarrett from in Ireland? So whereabouts is she from in Ireland? Don't worry about the spelling. because it might be a tricky one for some. So first person in the chat box will get a jersey. Oh, we're struggling.
That is tough.
I know you said it a fair amount.
Oh, there we go. We got one.
Alessandra. On the ball, on the ball. Okay, and I'm going to throw one out that I done my presentation on. How many girls teams do we plan to enter into the TSA this year? Molly!
You hadn't even finished the question and you got the answer.
Brilliant, brilliant. All right, we will have 2 jerseys on their way to them 2 girls, Molly and Alessandra. Well done. All right, this is the final goodbye. Thank you so much, Rihanna. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'll see you soon.
Bye, guys.
Bye, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.